Welcome to River Talk. This is the first one of the 2016-2017 school year, and our topic today is the election updates for the 2016 election. I'm here with Zach, Trey, and Colin, and the election. One major thing is we have 4 candidates right now. 2 of them seem to be more in the news, being Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, but they have become very, very close in recent times in the polls. Why do you guys think that is?
Well, I think that, as we close in on November 8th, I think a lot more people are getting more involved. A lot of people haven't been very involved along the way. And so when you have more of a percentage of the population getting involved, that's when you're going to see the numbers, grow, and then they're going to get tighter. And then as different things as controversial as these candidates are, Donald Trump says this thing, Hillary does this thing, and I think more and more people are really finally starting to look into what each candidate brings to the table.
Well, I think you also got to take into account the fact that what I like is how the Clinton campaign also taught about how well her health is right now. And then she goes and basically falls down with pneumonia.
Right.
And so you have a candidate who's been out of the race for say the past 3 to 4 days. We have the other candidate going basically unchallenged, and so now he's starting to gaining ground in some of the major battleground states as well because of that.
Mm-hmm. And I think along with the Hillary getting sick thing, you hear all these conspiracy theories about Hillary's health, and you see, and then these things start to come out more true, and you have to look at Donald Trump. Well, he's not the healthiest person, but I don't want somebody that's going to collapse in office. So I think a few more people might be persuaded like that, and also along with health concerns. Hillary's latest statements, like the basket of deplorables, and making up this kind of alt-right scenario, and I think it's having a negative effect, at least for now.
Because it is fairly obvious that Donald Trump does have the support of some sects of white supremacist organizations. It's just a small sect though of his voting base. But just to go ahead and say, okay, that small sect now makes up 47% of his voting base is just, I think it's blowing it out of proportion as well.
Definitely. So what do we have for poll results right now as of today, Friday, September 16th? Happy Constitution Day. What do we have for poll results right now?
Well, right now, over the course of the weekend, the number compared to yesterday morning, the numbers were a lot tighter. But over the course as the day went on towards night, new polls were released and some new things were happening. So, for instance, in Iowa, Trump was originally up by 0.8%. A new poll came out. He's up. It shows him up 4 points. He's now at 4.3% in Iowa averaging. Then in Georgia, which has long been said a toss-up state, if you will, he was up by 1.7. Now a poll came out. He's up by 4.2%. Then Florida, he's also 2 polls came out over the weekend saying that he's up by 4% in Florida. Colorado, it's expecting to go heavily Democratic, but now a poll came out yesterday. He's up by 4%, and now that Clinton originally had a lead of 8%, is now down to 3.7. And Arizona, Trump also extended his lead there by 1 point. Ohio, Clinton did have a small lead there, but now Trump has a lead of 1.7%. And if we're just overlooking nationally from a 4-point race, it's Clinton 41.9%, Trump 40.8%, Gary Johnson polling at 8.3%, and Jill Stein at 2.7%.
And Gary Johnson is somebody that a lot of people, and apparently no people, want to talk about these days.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you guys think of his kind of presence in this race? What do you think? What kind of impact do you think he's going to have in the next month and a half or so?
Well, it seems what kind of perplexes me is that when he's factored in the polls, he tends to hurt Hillary Clinton more with numbers, which I find kind of strange because his policy is a little more to the right, and Hillary Clinton is running as the Democrat, typically more center-left wing candidate. So you'd think with Gary Johnson, he'd be taking more votes from Donald Trump, but it seems to be the opposite. And I think if we were to give him a national debate stage, I think maybe that would shake up the numbers for Donald Trump and probably more for Hillary Clinton as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think if we just talked about them at all, it would change the numbers the most, because we don't really seem to address the fact that this is 4 candidates. We only seem to address that we have 2, but we have more than 2 candidates. We just don't talk about them. It's like, they're not exciting enough, so we just don't.
Yeah.
But they are in the race, they are presidential candidates, and most people don't even know they are.
Right, because this is very much so not a policy election.
Yeah.
This is to avoid insulting anybody. This is a kind of a shouting contest, and I think like Colin was saying, if Gary Johnson can get on the debate stage, I think he can really clean house pretty well. Because so far from both the right and the left, what we've seen from all the candidates is that this is a shouting contest. Not a whole lot of policy has been debated. So then once Gary gets on there and he passes up all the nonsense with the shouting contest and he really lays down policy, I think people will really start to perhaps change their mind on their voting base.
I mean, you look at both candidates too and their favorability ratings, and this is easily the candidates that we have now for both parties. They are some of the most highest unfavorable candidates that have ever been propped up.
Right, yeah, these are
And
record-breaking dislikes.
you actually have polls coming out saying 80% of Americans want a third option, 62% actually want to see Gary Johnson on the debate stage. So it's just numbers like that that just show that this election cycle really has a real chance for third-party candidates to get in. It's just the whole, you have to have 15% in 5 major polls to even have a chance of being considered to be put in the debates. I just personally think that is an unrealistic bar to set for third-party candidates when they get hardly any coverage.
And one of the problems with third parties is people they tend to overlook them because they're like, Democratic, Republican, those are the parties. We have these third parties. This is an option. They're like, I want another option. You have other options. You are completely overlooking your other options, and they're like, I don't want to throw away my vote. But really, if enough people vote for a third party, then it's not throwing it away. You're actually giving them the chance to become, a higher power in this election versus just what they are, which is just kind of on the sidelines to what is going on.
And that's what I kind of think, I kind of see in the future, as I talk to more and more people, particularly younger people that are getting more involved with politics, more involved about how the country's ran, at least in my perspective, I see this kind of shift in the spectrum, the political spectrum, where it's less and less right-wing, left-wing, politics, as much more of libertarian, authoritarian, and when you have that kind of shift, it really begs the question of the 2 major parties of whether or not they still have a lot of relevancy. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's going to change by next election, but it's certainly an ever-changing thing.
And speaking about the next election, I've been doing some research, and apparently if the Libertarian Party is able to get 10% of the popular vote in the election this fall, they basically guarantees that their next candidate is going to be on the debate stage.
Really?
Yeah. Because they've shown that they are able to make a case and able to reach out to people, that they are popular enough to actually have a campaign that can go against the other 2 parties.
I think it's interesting that you talk about having a shift, because if you look throughout history, these political parties, they shift. They don't stay the same forever. And I feel like we've had the ones we have now for a long time. And it is time to maybe shift around what they stand for and where it all is, and if these parties really work for the modern generation.
Right. I think as we start to see the kind of stereotypes of both parties, staunch Republicans and their overwhelming Christianity, and then you've got these absurd atheist liberals that want to legalize this drug and have that regulation. I think as those stereotypes start to kind of dissipate into these changing forces, you really start to see more division, but then you also see more unity, which I think is very important in this country, because there's so many different social problems that everyone has to split hairs on, and that's one of the things that I actually really like about Gary Johnson. Whether or not you like his policies 100% or not, he is somebody that kind of seems to be a uniting force, that somebody sees that these other 2, and not to discredit Jill Stein, but her numbers are even lower than Gary Johnson's, but when people look at Trumpster and Hillary, you see a lot of people see kind of a negative connotation, and that's not completely out of But when you see Gary Johnson, what he represents is the uniting force that that the country can stop being so divided on and kind of come together on something.
If he could really get in the spotlight, he could have a good chance, because you guys were right earlier, there are so many people that dislike Hillary or dislike Donald Trump that if you can get someone else in the spotlight, they have a decent chance. They just have to be able to get in the spotlight,
Exactly.
News doesn't seem to cover them because they're not as interesting, they're not in the spotlight now.
That's right.
But get them in there and you don't know what it could happen.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you talk about how the news doesn't show, because they don't. Because Gary Johnson, at least from what we've seen recently, he's not as controversial per se as the two big candidates. And go ahead, Zach.
And, what really gets me is that, the media sits by and waits for an opportunity to absolutely, because he has been gaining in the polls. He's going from 9% to 10%. A Quinnipiac poll came out showing him at 13%. So the one opportunity they have to just shred him is, of course, with the whole controversy with Aleppo. I mean, okay, you have a Democratic candidate who does not understand what C means on a classified document. You're going to go out and tell me that just because Gary Johnson can't name one city in Syria, that he is all of a sudden the worst candidate you can have for foreign policy.
He's absolutely, there are something like 4,000 major cities in the entire globe, and he forgets what one of them. And he even owned up to it.
Yeah,
he put out a formal statement saying, "Hey, I screwed up. I'm human, just like the vast majority of us." Mm-hmm. So,
but when I looked up information about what was going on in the recent times,
mm-hmm.
it really was just Trump and Hillary.
Mm-hmm.
So. You guys just get this more out there and realize that there is so much more than just these two people. We are back. We took a short break, but as I was saying, the candidates and the news seem to have different things that they show, because the news will say, this part of the candidate, this, but you need to listen to what they are saying and actually about their policies, because we were discussing that. They're not really talking about policies as much.
Right.
That's kind of an issue.
The media has a distinct lack of showing what their actual policies are. So let's talk about that real quick. What I see from Donald Trump, if you try to push away all the, he said this, he said that, if you look at his policy, he's got a very, very much so conservative, a lot of policies. He wants a very strong military presence throughout the world. He wants a very strong immigration control, and we've seen that with his wall plan in immigration control, right? And so, he's a lot of people say that he flip-flops a lot on policy. Like, he's not for Planned Parenthood, but then he is, and then he's not for this and he's not for that. But when I look at his policies, I see very conservative and very, very much so in the wake of right-wing politics. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think over the course of time, after the convention, he has done a much better job of actually uniting the Republican Party with his policies. I mean, the longer they take a look at him, they're like, okay, he does agree with, he may not be the best candidate, he wouldn't be someone I would have voted for in the primary, but he's got enough of my values and policy ideas that I would like to see in office that, okay, I'll vote for him.
Yeah, one of those, he's close enough to what I want compared to the others who aren't, and that's why, they are starting, you don't hear as much that the Republicans are all upset about him. He is starting to, get more into that.
And I think still, even though this has just about nothing to do with policy, I think that there is still a large majority, maybe a majority of his voters that are on he upsets the establishment, and I like that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, partially myself, really like that he kind of upsets all the stiffy, rich politicians. He's not a lifetime politician, but he knows exactly how to get people to talk about whatever he wants them to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So Hillary Clinton's campaign, what do you guys think of her kind of textbook Democrat?
Well, I mean, what she says, she's just going to be a third term of Obama. So,
right.
I mean, if you're looking for policy, just look at what Obama's done the last 8 years. It's going to be practically similar to what he's been doing. I mean, she wants to aid the rebels in Syria. She wants to overthrow the Assad regime, which honestly, as history has taught us, regime change doesn't make the world a safer place. It just makes more people mad at us and want to kill us, basically.
Colin, what do you think about all this?
Well, I think that in addition to Hillary planning on continuing Obama's policies if she were to become elected, I think Bernie Sanders has had quite an impact on her platform and the platform of the Democratic Party as a whole. So I think in order to satisfy the base, if she does decide to go that route, if elected, she would probably take more liberal stances, like more regulations on banking, higher minimum wage, like in the $15 area, things like that, if she wants to keep her base happy and unite the Democratic Party with Bernie supporters and your more traditional Democrats.
That's one of the interesting things that I saw that right around the time of the convention is that Bernie had already been beaten out by Hillary, and a lot of people were upset, saying this and that, the system's rigged against him, whatever. But then Bernie Sanders comes out and endorses Hillary, even though at least now I'm not on the left, but like from looking looking from the outside, it looked like the Democratic Party was very, very divided prior to the convention, because there were so many people left for Bernie and so many people for Hillary. But then as soon as soon as the convention happens, that's when the party, at least a little bit, starts to unite a little bit more.
I feel like that's a good thing though, like when you have these different candidates running for the same party that, one is the one that we put ahead.
Sure.
Uniting them, that's good for their party. They know that. They're not, they're not stupid. They realize if you want to get the voters, keep a party as a whole, you need to come together, regardless of how much you do or don't totally agree on everything.
And I personally just believe the DNC adopted some of Bernie's policies just to pander to Bernie supporters. I feel like a lot of those that they put in there aren't ones they're going to actually enact over the course of her presidency.
Right.
It's just, the typical politician thing, you say one thing, do another, basically.
Right.
But that's the problem. You can never truly know if the information you're receiving is correct or not.
Right.
They could be lying. Any of the people running could be lying about what they plan to appease the voters to get elected.
Right.
So you never truly know if what they're saying is true.
Yeah, so then as humans, we have to kind of take that gamble and kind of say, I'm going to make this kind of compromise, even though I don't particularly agree with this part of your policy, I do agree with this.
And that's just one thing I really dislike with this election cycle. It's just, you need to vote against Trump, you need to vote against Hillary.
Go.
We are back. We had a minor technical glitch, but Trey, you were speaking beforehand.
So what this race has this unhealthy thing for the American people, where it's been so much of I don't want to vote for this, I don't want to vote for that. There hasn't been like very many candidates that we say we want to vote for him. For a long time it's been, let's vote for the better out of a terrible situation.
It kind of seems now like it's one of those lesser evils type things,
Right.
where most people are interpreting it. They're like, I hate this person, but I hate this one more.
And that's part of the reason why people come out and support Gary Johnson now, is just because they feel like both candidates are they aren't a representation of, a very well representation of the United States and its values. And then people see Gary Johnson, they see his policy. He's an honest guy. If we're being honest, we are. He is a very
He seems
honest,
like more integritous.
He has more integrity compared to the other candidates by far. And it's just the ability to inspire people and unite people, like you said earlier. He's actually uniting people. He's not trying to, he's not making comments about Trump supporters or Hillary supporters. He's staying on topic with the issues compared to not. Yeah.
He's not competing in the shouting contest, as I like to call it. Part of the shouting contest has really been kind of like perpetuated by each candidate's ads that they run. For a long time we didn't see really any ads from Donald Trump. And we've always kind of seen ads, whether or not they've been directly linked to the Clinton Foundation, they most likely have. But we see all these slanderous ads, and if Donald Trump says this, Donald Trump said that, and now we're just now kind of starting to see Donald Trump run ads. But neither of them are focusing on policy, which is really what the people need to be focusing on. They're more or less saying, that person's bad, but I'm okay.
They're superficial.
Right.
They're superficial. They're not, here's what I believe in, here's what I can do. It's, this other person sucks for this reason.
Right.
They're very much a superficial thing.
And that's probably the sole reason as to why both these big candidates have record-breaking disapproval rates.
And what really surprises me is Hillary Clinton is just so unpopular that, I mean, you have the current sitting president, you have the vice president campaigning for her, you have former President Bill Clinton, her husband, campaigning for her. And just like you have all these big name Democrats campaigning for her, even Bernie Sanders, and it's not enough to just chip away Donald Trump. And he's just, his poll numbers are climbing with whatever he seems to do, really.
Right.
And even though she has all these big people supporting her, it's just not enough to really take away Trump's edge.
Right, and you know she has all these big states like Washington and California that have a lot of electoral college votes, but you know you see Trump's like states overall is the numbers climbing, and you know those little states will really
They add up. They add up.
By the time November 8th comes around. Yeah, so.
Well, this is what we have for you today. Thank you for watching River Talk.
Happy Constitution Day.
Yeah. Hope to see you next time.
Stay informed.